You're doing good.
He's way up. Maybe that's a good time. Yes.
Okay, very good, committee. Good morning. I hope we're all enjoying the wonderful weather that we're having out there for February. So thank you all for being here. Conferees, thank you all for coming. We appreciate you being here. First thing, Dennis, who's on WebEx?
It appears that.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. We have Representative Thomas on WebEx currently.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, request for bill introductions. Come on up. Department of Ag.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Kelsey Olson, and I serve as the Deputy Secretary of the Kansas Department of Agriculture. I'm here to request introduction for RS 0517. This bill makes modifications to the Pet Animal Act, which is carried out by the Animal Inspection Facility Inspection Program within the division. These modifications to the bill will help address some deficiencies that were identified in a previous post-legislative audit report, as well as provide the ability for shelters to recover funds when they take in animals on behalf of the state. So with that, I appreciate the opportunity and appreciate your consideration of the bill. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you for that. Committee objections. Thank you. Bill is entered. Don't try to mess with me this early in the morning. Committee further bill introductions. Representative Humphreys.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to ask for consideration to introduce 23 RS 0955 regarding the Woman's Right to Know Act, requiring notifications concerning medical abortions.
Very good. Committee objections. Seeing none, bill is entered.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further bill introductions. Representative Hauser.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have two I'd like to introduce today. First one is 23 RS 1120, Kansas Anti-Red Flag Gun Seizure Act. The second one is 23 RS 0963, Kansas Gun Rights Protection Act.
Very good. Committee objections. Seeing none, bills are entered. Very good. Committee further or conferees further bill introductions. Seeing none. Okay, we'll move on today. We're going to have a couple of hearings here. The first hearing is HB 2304, Standardized Firearm Safety Programs in School Districts. Mike, are you going to?
Do we need to approve the amendments?
Yeah, I will. Okay. Thank you.
Mike Heim with the Revisor Statutes Office. House Bill 2304 is a bill that deals with firearms training in schools. There was a bill introduced last year. It was Senate Bill 522 that was identical to this. It was in the Senate Federal and State Affairs Committee. It passed out of that committee but died on general orders. What the bill does is it's relatively short for purposes of promoting safety and protection of students and emphasizing how students should respond when encountering a firearm. The Board of Education of a school district may provide for firearms safety education programs. State Board of Education shall establish curriculum guidelines for a standardized firearm safety program and so on. Then it provides for different recommendations. Kindergarten grades 1 through 5 shall be based on Eddie Eagle Gun Safe program offered by the National Rifle Association, grades 6 through 8. Again, based either on this Eddie Eagle Gun Safety or any successor program or hunter education programs offered by the Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks, or grades 9 through 12, basically hunter safety programs offered by the Wildlife and Parks. If you've got questions, I'll try and answer them.
Very good. Committee questions. Representative Hoy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is there anything in current state statute that prohibits local school districts from currently offering the NRA's Eddie Eagle program for their gun safety curriculum?
Not that I'm aware of.
Very good. Representative Saunders.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This bill doesn't require school boards to do anything. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Committee further questions of the reviser. Seeing none, Representative Hoy.
I'd like to clarify on that from the reviser. This bill would mandate that local school districts stop offering any current gun safety education programs that they may have if they are not Eddie Eagle from the NRA.
What the bill provides is that the Board of Education may provide and so on, so it's permissive, but then they shall basically, there's guidelines if they do. So that's what the bill does.
Committee further questions? Mike, you're off the hook. Thank you for that. Okay, first we have proponents. We have Representative Patrick Penn. Representative, welcome to committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman and Ranking Member. It's been a little while since I was here in this particular committee room, so thank you for having me here today. I have my testimony. It should be inside your packets, and I'd like to go ahead and highlight that at this time as briefly as I can. Mr. Chairman, honorable members of the committee, I support this bill. Education is a must when it pertains to our children, and I'm a firm believer in our right to bear arms, and I also believe that there needs to be a component of education added as well. So as you proceed today, please take into account the fact that one day it may be your child or grandchild that may come across a gun in the public space or in private. With this training, it can prevent the pain that so many have endured. And in my testimony later on, I'll elucidate a few of those instances. Let's protect our children and add this education component. The language of the bill is plain, both in its intent, its idea, and its price tag. When this bill was introduced, before I came to the legislature, it was introduced in 2018. The estimated cost to implement these curriculum guidelines was mere $2,500. That same number comes from the fiscal note on HB 2460 when it was heard in the House Fed and State Committee that particular year. According to the records that I reviewed when I presented this bill 2 years ago, it does not appear that the Department of Education submitted any testimony to the contrary for that bill hearing. Even in 2021, when I was still in this committee and we ran the bill for a second time, it ran as substitute House Bill 2089. The fiscal note remained with the minimal impact of a mere $2,500 to cover the cost of travel to incorporate the program and deliver any necessary materials, because the materials are coloring books and videos that you can see on YouTube right now. In 2022, last year, this bill was reintroduced as Senate Bill 522, and the Department of Education came out in force in vocal opposition to the bill. They also raised the estimated price tag of the cost to implement this simple bill to $70,000 of taxpayers' dollars. I guess they thought that the sticker shock would wave people off. This committee should be asking, in my estimation, what changed in the Department of Education's interpretation of the bill to require an additional $67,500 of taxpayers' liability for their estimate from 1 year to the next. If the Department of Education interprets this bill to require or even allow them to rewrite the standards dictated by the bill, then I believe that there's a need to clarify the legislative intent. If the Department of Education could create any standards on firearm safety that it wanted under this bill, just like it can today, you've heard it alluded to, then there would be no reason for those of us who have been working on this bill for years to push the legislation, and the opposition would be completely unfounded. Through this bill, the NRA, 3 little letters, don't be scared, the NRA is providing its gold standard programming for firearm safety training for our Kansas kids and saving lives at no cost and negligible impact to the budget. In addition, the Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks program that was developed with great care will become the standard for the higher grade levels. And I would encourage this committee to delve deeper into the Department of Education's interpretation of us, the legislature's intent in our plain language, as well as how it arrived at a much higher price tag tacked onto the bill in 2021. I urge you to let us now come together, ladies and gentlemen, in strength to promote and ensure that our children in Kansas are properly educated. We know that that is the great divider between tragedy and success. Education is that great force multiplier. And ensure that our children in Kansas are not only properly educated at grade appropriate fashion on firearm accident prevention and how to practice gun safety in accordance with our Kansas law. That's right, it's lawful. You also see that there are two new links down here showing how this legislation is written and plainly intended is urgently needed to help, to whatever extent possible, prevent tragedies such as what happened to 4-year-old Michaela McKay, who found a firearm in her home and had an accidental charge, and 13-year-old Adam Toledo, who was out in the streets and was playing with the firearm and actually had the police respond, from occurring here with our Kansas children. Why do I say that? Because the Eddie Eagles Gun Safe program, kind of like Stop, Drop, and Roll. You remember those? Kind of like DARE, Don't Do Drugs. It merely says 4 things. If you see a gun in the street or at home, stop. Don't touch it. Run away. Tell an adult. When that is impressed in the child's muscle memory, they remember it for decades. Stop. Don't touch it. Run away. Tell an adult. If they find it on the bleachers in a gym bag, stop. Don't touch it. Run away. Tell an adult. I cannot understand for the life of me why anyone would not want to have our children educated on that. Our fight now is to protect any other parent from experiencing the pain of losing a child due to a lack of training on the appropriate reaction when encountering a firearm. This legislative change will help in achieving that goal while leaving the final decision over whether to teach firearm safety up to each individual school board. It is not a mandate. As a state, what we do is we provide for the standardization of the training, but the decision on how it's done is left to the school districts or to the school board and pushed down to the school districts. This language has previously enjoyed overwhelming bipartisan support, and it has passed favorably out of both the House and the Senate in past years. I urge you to join me in support and vote yes when you have the opportunity to recommend this favorably out to the full body. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll be happy to stand for questions either now or at the appropriate time.
Very good. Committee questions. Representative Hoy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the testimony. I do have a question in reference to your comments about the fiscal note, because I don't see anything in the bill that does say that the NRA is going to offer all of their materials for free. And when you look at the curriculum guidelines, that's free. You can download that. And then it does walk through kids. We're going to watch a video. There's an activity book, but teachers can't just show things off of YouTube if they're licensed in the classrooms. They can't just pull that. And the DVD costs $9.95, and then the activity book is $5. So we have 949 schools that offer at least one class of K through 8. So if they all each buy one DVD, that's $9,442. And if we buy an activity book for each of the K through 8 graders, that would be $1.6 million. So without that language in there saying that the materials and everything are going to be provided, to me, this comes across as a no bid contract with the NRA. So how do we know that these materials are going to be offered to the local school districts for free?
I would encourage you to look at the previous testimony provided by those representatives of those associations and watch the video of their testimony. You and I both sat up there when they testified on this before. You know that they actually testified that they were going to offer that material. So I would tell you, go back and look at the historical reference, and you will see that it is not $1.6 million. That has never been the case. And while I can appreciate you saying that they can't push, or teachers can't put things out in the classroom because it has a license on it, or that it has a moniker or imagery on it for the NRA, their logo or whatever the case is. We've seen that schools, public schools in the state of Kansas and across the nation are putting out all types of stuff, right? Without any care about whether or not they're promoting somebody else's logo, whether or not they're promoting someone else's business. That's never been a consideration, and I don't understand why you're raising it right now. But I take that back. I do understand why you're raising that right now.
Thank you. Well, I am raising it. We've never had a hearing in this committee that I've been able to ask this question on, but it's one thing to offer something up in testimony, but without language in the bill, there's no guarantee that materials are going to be offered for free. So I thank you.
Thank you. What the bill states, plain language of the bill does not state that it has to be the NRA's Eddie Eagle gold standard. What it says is based upon, and there's a reason for that. What the bill states is that it goes back to those 4 principles that I just delineated. And it simply states, if you see a gun as a child, stop, don't touch it, run away, tell an adult. If the state wanted to come back and say, we don't want Eddie Eagle because we're afraid of 3 letters, we want to do Tommy the Turtle or Susie the Squirrel, maybe that's why they came up with a $70,000 price tag. The only thing that I've said in my testimony, madam, is that you all enjoined the Department of Education to explain themselves because, as we heard in previous testimony from the proponents, this is not only the gold standard, this is simple to understand. This also, from the Department of Budget, with Mr. Profit's signature, when this bill was first introduced for 2 to 3 years previous, only had a price tag of $2,500, which was predicated in those fiscal notes off of the fact that the NRA were provided at no cost, minimal cost rather, for the cost of gas to travel, to put a guy in the Eddie the Eagle suit, and to pass out coloring books. That is the truth.
Representative Reeves.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Representative, good to see you. You and I have had discussions on this bill before. Anytime we can educate our kids on an epidemic that's been going around the country, children getting hurt, parents getting also killed by abuse of firearms from children. We just saw a teacher back east was killed, or not killed, but shot by a 6-year-old. I think it's a good thing that we educate these kids on how to handle firearms. My question to you, are you aware of any type of active shooter training being offered in schools right now?
I am not, sir. It doesn't mean that it doesn't happen. I would imagine that it does, both for the staff and for the youth as well.
Would you be opposed to an amendment offering, along with this, active shooter training for schools?
If I could see the language of it, I just conceptually, active shooter training. I think that is a great thing. I personally, to answer your question directly, I would like to see this bill passed out clean. I would love to entertain active shooter training if that's the case. I know that in times past, there have been certain entities that have been very resistant and hesitant, which is why this bill failed at the governor's desk. She thought that she had actually signed it into law when it was Substitute House Bill 2089. She told us that week of veto override when we went in as the Black legislative delegation. When she introduced herself to me, she said, "Hey, I signed off on your bill, right?" And other members had to remind her of her caucus, "No, ma'am, you vetoed that at the last second because the KSB told you that it was a mandate on training." So if the KASB is still going to come out and say that they're opposed to the legislature ever saying anything to do to the schools, such as fiscal or financial literacy, such as Eddie the Eagle gun safe training, if a parent or school district wants to do it, I would imagine that they would also be opposed to what you're proposing, which is training on active shooters, because they would say that the legislature can't do anything to them.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Highbarger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative, for being here on this issue again. I think you know who the Kansas Constitution gives the authority for general supervision of grade schools to. Is that? Okay. And who is that?
I think I understand your question. You said that the Kansas Constitution does what?
Yeah, that was a poorly worded question. To whom does the Kansas Constitution give the general authority for the general supervision of our grade schools?
The provision for that goes to the legislature. We have put it in our Constitution that it goes to the Department of Education.
Would if I said that was the Kansas State Board of Education, would that be accurate?
Right. I'm sorry, I'm having a little trouble here.
If I said it was the Kansas State Board of Education, would that be accurate?
Is that your stipulation, that it goes to the Kansas State Board of Education for the instruction of youth?
General supervision of grade school education.
Right. And who supervises the Kansas State Board of
They are directly elected by the people of Kansas.
Exactly. And those are the same people who elected us. So
and they have a separate authority from us.
So
I'm going to go back to one of your other assertions.
They're on par with us. Is that what you're saying? I'm not understanding your question.
They have independent authority because they're directly elected by the people of Kansas, just like the Attorney General or the Secretary of State.
Okay.
And okay, you've mentioned several times that this legislation doesn't do anything mandatory. Let me read from your bill. For schools who choose to have gun safety programs, I think that's a great idea. But such guidelines shall include kindergarten through grades 1 through 5 shall be based on the Eddie Eagle Unsafe Gun Program. Is that not mandatory? Shall sounds mandatory to me.
Well, you just said it yourself, Representative. For schools who choose,
right?
That means that they have a choice. That's not a mandate. But should they make the choice?
You're mandating the content of the program. And that's something that I believe is beyond the authority of the Kansas Legislature.
So to answer your question, I think there was a question. If a school so chooses, if a parent chooses to have their child enrolled, if they want to have their child receive this training, not all parents do, but for those who do, they can approach the school district, right? If they approach that, then the school district, if they opt in, then they pull down off the shelf as provided, as you just said, by the higher authority, the standard. And that's what a standard is. The standard is what we do here every day across the state of Kansas. The Crown Act that you're running right now, you want a single standard across the state. So that's what I'm saying. All what this bill provides for is that we as a legislature are telling this entity have a standard so that when everyone pulls, if they decide, if they so choose, they can pull it down. And it is one standard piece of training based on the 4 principles, which are the 4 principles of the NRA's Eddie Eagle program. Now, if they want to, as I said before, start a program that is the Tommy the Turtle program based on those 4 principles, that's fine. And if the taxpayers want to pay $70,000 to do that instead of getting the deal that they already have it, that the administration has previously said was only $2,500, and we have no explanation why it is so much more now, all of a sudden, if that's what the taxpayers want to do through their legislature, then that's the will of the people. But I can't for the life of me understand why someone would want to pay $70,000 when they can pay $2,500.
Very good. Thank you very much, Representative.
Thank you, sir.
Next, we have Representative Moy. I believe I got that right this time. So anyway, thank you, Representative. Welcome to committee.
You did get that correct. Thank you very much, Chairman. Good morning, committee. We've been here before. We've talked about Eddie Eagle before. For the freshmen that haven't been here for it, this is not new proposed legislation. This has been passed through both houses, and this has actually made its way to the governor's desk. This is nothing new. These days, as a nation, we are struggling constantly to find common ground. The common ground here is the safety of children. I don't know anything that is more important to any of us in this room or anyone who is watching from home than the safety of our children. For those of you who don't know, prior to being up here and being elected as a representative for my district, I have spent over a decade in gun rights advocacy. So I have both been here at the State House as well as in Washington, D.C., advocating that education is the key to safety. This is a conversation that we're having all over the country all the time. We are lucky enough here in Kansas that we take our safety seriously, to the point where when we are given an opportunity to teach our children how to keep themselves safe, we're going to take that opportunity. We already teach our children stranger danger, what to do if you get lost. We teach them what to do in case of a fire, a tornado, We teach them intruder drills. We teach them stop, drop, and roll. We teach them dare to say no to drugs. We teach sex ed. We teach body safety. We teach driver's ed. Why would anyone purposefully leave out teaching children how to keep themselves safe around firearms? Even if you do not personally have a gun in your home, you and I both want our children to know the basic formula of stop, don't touch, run away, tell a grown-up. We also understand that it's not simply about just teaching our children to get to a safe place if they see an unsecured firearm, but it's also about teaching our children to recognize if someone around them is being unsafe with a firearm. When you give children consistent information on what gun safety and safe gun handling looks like, they'll know if someone around them is being unsafe, and that could give them crucial moments to get themselves to safety. Everyone here understands that even if you don't own a gun, our children will eventually be in the presence of someone who does. Kansas is a constitutional carry state. If you go to the grocery store in any town, any grocery store, you are likely around a firearm. The fact is that our kids are going to be in situations where they happen to be with someone who might not be doing the right thing with a firearm. Why would we not teach children and equip them with the information needed to keep themselves safe in that kind of a situation? Who wouldn't want our children to know to get to safety and be able to tell us if they have encountered an unsecured firearm or that someone is being unsafe with a firearm? Who wouldn't want children to be taught easy, effective ways to prevent accidents and avoid negligence? Who wouldn't want to give children the tools necessary to avoid tragedy? We can all agree that our children's safety comes before our preferences on whether or not we personally own a firearm. We can also agree that our children's safety comes before our personal preference on which organization happened to come up with the easy to remember phrase, stop, don't touch, run away, tell a grown-up. While I was preparing similar testimony for the Senate side a few weeks ago, I mentioned the words Eddie Eagle, and my OA, who is a young adult, went, "Oh, I remember that. Stop, don't touch, run away, tell a grown-up." He hadn't heard that or seen the Eddie Eagle anything in 10 years. That's how memorable this program is. He didn't remember that it was the NRA. He remembered stop, don't touch, run away, tell a grown-up. That is what this bill is supposed to be doing. We are supposed to be setting a standard for our kids to be able to learn something that they can take for the rest of their lives to keep themselves safe. I urge you to equip our children with this fundamental, uniform, decades-proven effective accident prevention education. They need this education in order to keep themselves safe when we are not there to keep them safe. This bill does not mandate that Kansas schools complete and offer this course. All this bill does is set a standard saying this is important information to share with our children. Should you choose at your local level to implement this, this is the best of the best stop, don't touch, run away, tell a grown-up. It's just as simple as that. I appreciate your time and your consideration today. I urge you to stand up for Kansas children and their safety by passing this bill favorably out of committee without amendment. Thank you so much.
Very good. Thank you, Representative Moy. Representative Saunders.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of quick questions. Number one, are you comfortable with this being an option rather than mandatory training? I mean, you obviously want people to be trained, but as this bill stands now, it says school boards may. Are you comfortable with that?
I'm absolutely comfortable with that. I think that it is imperative that we leave it up to local school boards and their constituents on how they implement this particular training.
And second of all, are you aware whether or not stop, don't touch, run away, tell a grown-up, is that a copyrighted phrase? Do you know whether that is or not?
Honestly, I'm not sure if the NRA copyrighted that or not. I know that we've got some other proponents in the audience that would be able to answer that for you.
Thank you for your presentation, Representative.
Representative Clayton.
Thank you. Thank you for being here, Representative. So in your testimony, you mentioned constitutional carry, which was passed a number of years ago. For those of you who were not here when that was passed, essentially now that allows anyone to carry a weapon with no training. I was a supporter of concealed carry because it mandated training. You mentioned how guns were now everywhere, including in grocery stores. And so because now guns are everywhere, now we need to train our children to be safe. I would posit this theory. Perhaps we can repeal constitutional carry and make people more safe. If you need a gun to go to the grocery store in Kansas, that's an issue. So thank you. Thank you for being here.
I would say that since it is a federal outlined enumerated right, that constitutional carry was outstanding legislation. I appreciate it very much. We do recommend education for everyone. That's never not been a recommendation. So I can appreciate that, in effect, you're concerned about going to the grocery store with people with firearms. And I understand that. And we actually carry for self-defense just in case people are being unsafe, as I said in my testimony.
Well, I would posit the theory that the grocery store would probably be safer for children if guns were not there.
Very good. Thank you for that, Representative. I might remind everybody we have another hearing and another bill to work, and so we might want to kind of move things along a little bit. I'm going to take two more questions, and then we're going to move on. Representative Heiberger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to point out that so-called constitutional carry wasn't constitutional carry until a Supreme Court decision last year. But you answered my other question already, but I just want to make sure you understand that, or ask if you understand that any of the opposition to this bill isn't opposition to gun safety training for kids. It's for mandating how it's done by the Board of Education and local school districts.
Yes, and I believe that Representative Penn addressed that.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. One final question, Representative Bueller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You referenced this is and I've heard it said this is the gold standard for this type of training. And not to make light of it, but are there examples of silver or bronze level training, or are there other examples of other organizations that provide this training? Because it seems that, as the previous representative talked about, maybe the letters associated with this training draw some emotion. I'm just looking for, are there other examples of training out there? Thank you.
We have all kinds of different gun safety education, all the way from children all the way through adult. Some of the other ones that I know across the country, Derek LeBlanc has Gun Safe Foundation. And the problem with using other ones is that they are not as effectively put together. They are not what the NRA has done with their training is that they have decades of experience with making sure that they have the videos already available, with the activity books already available and things like that. Other programs, which would be fantastic in other settings, they just cannot compete as far as making it available and readily accessible to school districts.
Thank you much. Thank you,
You're
Mr. Chair.
Very
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you for being here. Next, we have Travis Couture Lovelady, National Rifle Association. Travis, who is no stranger to this committee, welcome.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. As a former member of this committee and former vice chair of this committee, I always love coming back to it. So thank you. Appreciate your time. I'll be brief. The discussion has been long on this, and just wanted to point out a few things. Of course, the NRA does support the bill, does think that firearm safety education training for children of all ages is important. When we talked about this bill early on, clear back when it was Representative Whitmer that first broached the idea for the legislature to take a look at this. Wanted to keep the cost down as much as possible, so we talked with the NRA Foundation. They do provide the materials for this to school districts. And also, if you're talking about for the older kids, the Department of Wildlife and Parks has their version of hunter safety. And then now, since the bill has been introduced and ran a few years, the NRA now provides, through the foundation, a free online course that does qualify for hunter safety. And it's entirely online for ages 16 and up. So anyone who takes that class is online, provided free for the NRA. We spent millions of dollars putting that together free for departments all across the country to be able to provide that online resource. And not only does that program free for states and for students who take the class, but it's also, if you know how the Pittman-Robertson money works, when you purchase ammunition, there's a tax, and that money goes to Pittman-Robertson, which is given by the Department of Interior back to states for conservation efforts. So if you're looking specifically at Kansas, just under 12,000 students have taken that online NRA Hunter Safety class. So that's $223,000 times 3. That would be just under $700,000 that the Department of Interior could give back to the state of Kansas for conservation efforts just by using the free online hunter safety program. And there is the regular program they still do, but all that stuff is provided by the foundation. The NRA Foundation, Friends of the Other NRA, is not political. I understand that this issue has become political because of our side of the organization, but the Friends of the NRA is nonprofit 501c3. They have nothing to do with politics, and both Eddie Eagle and the hunter safety is all provided for free through that foundation, through generous donations of people all across the country who care about firearm safety education. So happy to stand for questions, but just wanted to point out something a little different angle on this.
Representative Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Travis Reed, thanks for your presentation. Are you aware if, stop, don't touch, run away, tell an adult, is that a copyright phrase? Do you know whether or not?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative. We were looking at that, and I don't believe so, but we'll double check.
Okay. And then one comment, and it's not really a question, but I'd like you to expand on it. It seems rather obvious that gun safety is in the best interest of the NRA, but I'd like you to talk about that just for a moment.
Certainly. This program was developed in the 80s, so it's been around for 30 years, trained millions of kids on this, so it's certainly something, if we've gone through constitutional carry and looked at other ways we can promote firearm safety education at all ages. We certainly want to do so. So this isn't about making money. It's not about promoting the NRA. It's about our kids.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Hasswood.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for being here today. I have two questions. First is,
What's the effectiveness of Eddie Eagle? Just doing a quick Google search, it says a study found that, only it safely teaches children the safety message, but maybe only 1 out of 11 children reacted correctly. And that's, I believe, an old study. Is there any studies or indications or data that this is an effective program?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative. Yeah, I'm aware of that anti-NRA study. I understand where they're coming from, but the program has been very effective for many years, and there's a lot of folks that agree with that. I understand that they tried to discredit the program through a study, but no, I find it's highly effective.
So you don't have any data to present to us?
Millions of kids trained, millions of kids have gone through the program and find it very effective. Parents find it very effective.
Okay, not really what I was looking for. And second question, does the NRA profit in any way of implementing Eddie Eagle, maybe through the federal level, just because, we live in a capitalist society, so just wondering.
Mr. Chairman, Representative, no, we do not. In fact, it costs us a lot of money to implement this program.
Thank you.
One final question, Representative Hoy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the testimony. We did hear from previous conferees that this bill has been before us a number of times in the legislature, and the main component that concerns me has still not been addressed, and that is the failure to put in language that prohibits the use of firearms or live ammunition, or that prohibits firearms and live ammunition in K-12 classrooms as part of this program. And based on loopholes in federal and state law, without that prohibition, someone with a concealed carry permit teaching as part of this program or coming in as part of this program could be within the law if they are in possession of a firearm. And that's the biggest concern that I have. And so I'm wondering if we would offer that amendment again. Do you support putting in the language to prohibit firearms and live ammunition as part of the program?
Mr. Chairman, thank you, Ranking Member. I don't find it necessary. There's no firearms used in the Eddie Eagle program. The Department of Ed does not have, Department of Wildlife and Parks does not use firearms in that portion that they would do in the classroom. So I don't find it necessary. I understand you have issues with other parts of law that allow certain firearms to be brought into schools, but I don't think it's necessary for this bill.
Very quickly.
Well, the reason it is necessary is because state law provides an exemption for firearm safety education courses like this. So, and it also offers for any successor program. So today's program might not have guns in it, but who knows about tomorrow's. And either way, I believe that there is no imagery, actual firearms as part of the program. But if there are instructors, educators, anyone coming in, they walk in with a gun, that is allowed in K through 12 classrooms as part of these programs through the exemptions in state laws. So without that language, there would be no penalties or consequences for that.
Very good. Thank you, Representative. Thank you.
Thank you, Travis, for being here. Appreciate your time.
Next, we have Mariah Day. Mariah, welcome to committee. Kansas State Rifle Association.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'll keep this very brief. I know you have limited time today and don't want to take up that valuable time. I am appearing on behalf of the Kansas State Rifle Association. Just very briefly, essentially this bill would create a standard for firearm education in schools, as you already heard, based on objective fact, not on any politically motivated or political ideology, anything like that. You can see in my written testimony more about that on that topic. But essentially, it comes down to the fact that our educational system understands the importance of preparing children for life by talking about stranger danger, teaching internet safety, conducting fire and tornado drills, and more. Firearm safety should not be excluded from that list. And neither should it be an opportunity to promote a political agenda on one side or the other. The Eddie Eagle program is designed It's designated as one of the 2 standards in this bill, and it makes no value judgments about firearms. No firearms are used or displayed as part of the training, as previous conferees have said, and the program covers a very important topic that needs to be addressed with kids. Again, the program began in 1988 with the mission of teaching children 4 simple, easy to remember steps so they know what to do if they should come across a gun. In 2015, the NRA introduced a fresh new Eddie Eagle and added some friends known as his wing team. And though Eddie has evolved, his mission has not. Eddie and his friends still remind children that if they see a gun, they need to stop, don't touch, run away, and tell a grown-up. A very simple phrase I think all of us can relate to. All of us have heard many times, and is easy even for the youngest children to understand. With that, I'd just say that the Kansas State Rifle Association would like to see more firearm safety taught across the state. We'd like to see more responsible young people learn how to deal with firearms and how to handle them safely or to avoid them if they're small. With that, I'd urge your support and stand for questions.
Very good. Thank you, Mariah. Committee. I'm seeing none. Thank you.
Thank you.
Being here. Next, we have Tammy Bartels. Tammy, welcome to committee.
Thank you. My name is Tammy Bartles. I am a resident of Tonganoxie, Kansas. I am also a firearms instructor. I'm a mom. I'm a grandma, and I am a longtime public school advocate. I teach safety classes to children. The classes that I've taught previously were from the National Shooting Sports Foundation, which does involve live fire training. Teaching safety to children is one of the most important things we can do as parents, as citizens of our communities, as teachers, as educators. My daughter is a high school educator, now an assistant principal in the Kansas City area. Safety is one of the most important things we teach our children. From the day they're born, we teach them not to touch hot things like stoves. We teach them stop, drop, and roll. We teach them the DARE programs. We teach them about stranger danger. These are the things that we as a community are responsible for. I've heard some people talk about, and you guys have my written testimony, but I've heard some people talk about the efficiency or the effectiveness of this particular program. I would point out, again, as others have, that this bill does not require the use of the Eddie Eagle program. It is just something that they are to consider, that the state school board actually sets curriculum, which the state school board does. I have served on several curriculum committees at the state school board, including special ed curriculum. It's what they do. This bill is the legislature saying, hey, this is important to the children in our communities. We think you guys need to establish a curriculum so that everyone is learning the same things. And then that school board at the local level gets to decide whether they are going to offer the program or not. That's what this is doing. Some people say that the program doesn't work 100% of the time and think that should be a factor for not offering the program at all. Well, I would contend that DARE does not work 100% of the time. Children take DARE and still grow up to become drug users. That doesn't mean we don't teach DARE anymore. It means that we just have to work harder to reach those children. I did not share it in my written testimony, but I worked for 13 years in the state of Kansas in the child welfare system. I worked for KVC for 12 years, and then last year for the Department for Children and Families as a child abuse investigator. We would love for every parent to be perfect. We would love for every parent to safely store their firearm. We would love for every parent to be a responsible parent, but the fact is they are not. And so as a community, again, it is our responsibility to step in where other people cannot and teach children how to be safe. I've heard people express concerns about having firearms in the classrooms. This curriculum, upon reviewing it, does not involve any firearms training, handling of actual guns. Again, that is the state board deciding what that curriculum is, and they can quite clearly put in the curriculum that no actual firearms are to be used. We don't want to eliminate not teaching something because we're offended by positions of a specific political party or pact or anything like that. We need to keep our eye on the ball, and that is keeping our children safe. It is better to do something than nothing at all. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much, Tammy, for being here.
Thank you.
Okay, moving right along. We have a written proponent, Steve Lindquist, and now we'll go to opponents. Ann Ma, State School Board. And welcome to committee.
Hey, thank you. It's good to be back. I served on Fed and State for 4 years, so quite familiar with the operations and what we do. I do appreciate, Mr. Chair and committee, the opportunity to comment on House Bill 2304. First, let me say, the State Board of Education has no issue with firearms safety programs in schools because many already exist. I did a quick survey yesterday and heard back from about 8 schools that offer it just in my district. And that's fine with us. Some schools have trap shooting clubs. That's also great. What the State Board has a problem with is this legislative overreach into the authority of the State Board of Education and the local school districts of Kansas. The Kansas Constitution and the Kansas Supreme Court have given full authority over curricular standards to the State Board of Education. Let me repeat. The Kansas Constitution and the Kansas Supreme Court have given full authority over curricular standards to the State Board of Education. This is not a legislative matter. Schools do not need your permission to provide gun safety classes. They already do that. They do not need your guidance. Local districts are quite capable of choosing the program they want locally without our interference and without overreach. And that is exactly what they are doing now. Seriously, have any of you had complaints from constituents about the gun safety, firearm safety programs currently being offered? Interestingly, none of the proponents of this bill has ever contacted the state board that I know of to discuss firearm training in schools. That would be the proper route to take. And also, interestingly, there is nothing in this bill that would provide firearm safety training to a single student who does not already have it available. Nothing. If the school is not offering already, there is nothing in the bill to encourage them to do that. In fact, mandating the curriculum over local decisions might discourage them from offering firearm safety. If you want to get more kids into firearm safety training, then fund it, because by the Kansas Constitution, that is your job. And FYI, Governor Kelly vetoed the previous bill that landed on her desk for the express reason that it was legislative overreach into the authority of the State Board of Education. If the NRA wants to pitch Eddie Eagle to our schools, they can do that now. They're welcome to. But the State Board of Education will let local districts decide what firearm training they want and need locally. So to sum it up, this bill would not provide firearm safety training to a single child who does not already have it. There is no reason to tell districts they have to use something other than Eddie Eagle if that's not what they're using now. Not one reason. And honestly, do you want to be the one that has to go home and tell your local school district they have to change their firearm training because you know better than they do? And third, the legislature has no authority over curricular standards. We encourage you to table this bill and ask the proponents to find a more effective way to promote firearm safety in schools. This bill simply shifts the blame for gun violence to kids and away from the adults who are the real problem. And to answer a previous question, active shooter drills are already required by law in school. So I would be glad to stand for any questions.
Thank you very much. Committee, 2 quick questions, if any. Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we have Leslie Milton. Leslie, welcome to committee. And I might remind you to just be brief. We have to get through some stuff. So anyway, thank you.
No problem. I have to get back to school. So good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Leslie Milton, and today I'm here to advocate for the safety of our children and teens. As an educator of more than 25 years, I oppose the passage of House Bill 2304, which would make this program, Eddie Eagle program, the standardized curriculum for firearm safety grades K through 4 and an option for grades 5 through 8. In our state, an average of 45 children per year are killed by firearms. This makes gun violence our leading cause of death for our young citizens of ages 1 to 19. This is an alarming statistic. It means we should do everything in our power to reduce these numbers. The Eddie Eagle program has been shown to be ineffective at deterring children from handling guns that they encounter unexpectedly. The American Academy of Pediatrics itself opposes this program for this very reason. The Eddie Eagle program teaches children that they should not touch any firearm they encounter. The problem with this philosophy is that it does not take into account children's natural curiosity when adults are not around. Parents and guardians who believe their child will be safe from touching or using a gun that they encounter are given a false sense of security, when in reality, you cannot educate the curiosity out of a child. The responsibility to prevent gun violence should not rest on the judgment of mere children, some who will be only 5 years old, but instead must rest on the gun owner's secure storage procedures. We believe the local school board should decide which materials to use to implement a gun safety curriculum. There are other programs that school districts can choose from, and for that reason, this bill was opposed by the Kansas State Board of Education and the Kansas National Education Association when it was proposed in the Senate. I also have to add my own comment. If this curriculum was developed in the 80s, it is considered to be quite dated. There have been immense amounts of brain research done in the past 30 years, and I'm quite disappointed that we might not be able to find something better with more current brain research that we could use if indeed this is something that school districts decide to use. No parent should have to go through the grief of losing their child to unintentional gun violence. Secure storage procedures will lower the chance of this happening, not implementing this Eddie Eagle program. I urge you to oppose HB 2304. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Committee, a couple of quick questions. Representative Carpenter.
Thank you, Chairman Carpenter. Sorry, had to do it. We're not on committees very often anymore. Thank you so much for your testimony today. You gave a statistic of, on average, 45 individuals a year pass due to firearm issues here in the state of Kansas from 1 to 19 years old. Of those, are they safety related? Are some of those involved in crimes, especially when you start talking about 18, 19-year-old adults?
The statistics that we have state that 48% are gun suicides, 48% are gun homicides, and I'm sure the remaining percentage are unaccounted for as to the cause, direct cause. One statistic that we have is if in the home, if guns are kept locked, unloaded, separate from ammunition, the chance of any injury happening in the home is decreased by 78%, I believe.
Okay. I appreciate the clarification on those statistics because I think that additional information helps. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Very good, committee. Thank you very much for being here. I want to bring the committee's attention to written opponents. On the bottom of your agenda list there's probably 10 folks there. Committee, you can review that at your own leisure, and we will close the hearing on 2304. So with that, we'll open the hearing on House Bill 2406. And the first person I have up is Daryl Atterbury. Daryl, welcome to committee. Oh, sorry. Hang on. The reviser. One of these days, I will get that figured out. Mike.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, anytime you want to save time, do it. But anyway, what this bill does, it amends a section of the Personal and Family Protection Act, and it deals with off-duty police officers, and it provides that no personal authority for a building shall require, request, or record personal information of an off-duty officer, including but not limited to the officer's email address, home phone number, and so on, nor shall they require the off-duty officer wear anything identifying that person as being armed. That's the bill. This also was introduced in the past in 2022. It passed out of this committee. It was House Bill 2677, and it died on the House calendar.
Very good. Question is the reviser. Representative Ruiz, quickly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Very quickly. So, Mike, if you work for me and you're an officer, you come into my establishment, I ask you for your identification and you show me your badge identification, I can still ask that question, correct?
You do.
Okay, thank you.
Very good, Mike. Thank you very much. Next, we have Darrell Hatterberry. Thank you for being here. Sorry about the confusion.
Thank you. No problem. Mr. Chair, committee, I'm here representing the Kansas Association of Chiefs of Police, Kansas Peace Officers Association, and the Kansas Sheriff's Association, and probably KBI, the Highway Patrol, the FBI, the ATF, DEA, because it affects all of us. And this is to ask your support for House Bill 2406. Since passage of the Kansas Personal and Family Protection Act, law enforcement officers in many venues across the state have been asked for more than what is requested in the statute. And that is that we show our identification to somebody at the gate or at the entry point, and then be allowed passage into a facility. And that is not happening. We're being asked for much, much more than that, which is not in keeping with the statute. A couple of examples for those of you who may not have been able to have read my testimony yet. One is personal, and that is I went to Riverfront Stadium in Wichita, went to the Northwest Gate. As soon as they identified me as an officer, they called an on-duty or a part-time officer, a Wichita police officer over. Then they escorted me across the facility to another gate where I was required to show my badge and ID. Okay, that's in keeping with the statute. But then I had to show my ID, my driver's license. They then provided me with an electronic device where I was to put in my name, address, all my personal identifying information. And then when that was completed, they photographed my ID and badge. And then they were kind enough to give me a fluorescent band to put on my wrist to indicate that I was an off-duty police officer carrying a weapon in the facility. I found it objectionable. I think you would too, if you went to an event and they decided that we're gonna put a wristband on all legislators. But then a second situation was one of my officers took a friend of his to a hospital. They were having a psychological situation. After checking him in, the nurse asked if he wanted to go back and say goodbye, and he said, "No, I'm off-duty police officer. I'm armed, and I shouldn't go back there." Responsible. And then just moments later, two armed security personnel from the hospital came trotting up, asked if he was armed. He said, "Yes, I'm an off-duty officer. I can show you my ID." "We don't care. You can't have that weapon in the hospital. You have to get out, put it in your truck and come back, or just leave." That's not supposed to happen under this act. And on the way up here, I was thinking about my testimony, and I was thinking, wow, I'm remiss. I've got a situation with Wichita State University because I go to basketball games. And there, I go to the gate, I show them my ID, they call a supervisor over, they look at my ID and tell me, "Have a good night." That's the way it's supposed to work. So, What I'd like to do today is direct you to 75-7C17. That's in the current statute. And that language is in the Personal and Family Protection Act. And it's very direct language, and it's to cities, counties, and other political subdivisions not to regulate, prohibit, restrict, or prohibit the carrying of concealed handguns except as provided in other parts of the Act for people who are not law enforcement officers. And I say that, I would infer from that the legislature wanted to be very clear that cities, counties, and other political subdivisions were not to be putting undue roadblocks in the way of otherwise legal carry of firearms. And I'm not talking about concealed carry by citizens, not law enforcement. I'm just speaking about law enforcement. So I would take you from there to 75-C7C22, where it speaks about off-duty law enforcement officers. And the first part A there is an off-duty law enforcement officer may carry a concealed handgun in any building where an on-duty law enforcement officer would be authorized to carry a concealed handgun, regardless of whether the requirements of other parts that restrict other people from carrying is present. And the part that is specific to us, such officer possesses identification required by such officer's law enforcement agency and presents such identification when requested by another law enforcement officer. Like the officer who came to the gate at the baseball game for me, he could have taken that, looked at it, and I could have been on my way. But they had a different process in place. Or by a person of authority for the building where the carrying of concealed handguns is otherwise prohibited. That's that person at the gate who called the law enforcement officer over to contact me. I want to make clear that in our conferences, I've requested a show of hands from officers, and I say officers, agents, different law enforcement officers across the state, if they've been affected by this, and a lot of hands went up. So it's not just a Wichita thing. This is across the state. It's affecting a lot of law enforcement officers, and it's something that is more than what the statute has requested. So we would offer up that by requiring personal identification and being placed in a database, having a wristband put on is not what's covered by 75-7C22. That the person has to fill that form out or give more information than what's requested is akin to that governing body creating a regulation that will or a rule to restrict, if not prohibit, to dissuade officers from carrying their sidearm with them at any venue or location where this is occurring. And we don't believe that was the original intent of the legislature. I think that's clear from number C17. And if we move that over to C22, I just don't think that's what was originally intended. So we would offer up that the amendment or the House Bill 2406 would resolve the issue and relieve us from experiencing the request for additional information. I want to add that I go to great lengths personally to make sure that my real estate is hidden from view, from my car tags hidden from view for those people with ill intent, that I'm kind of hidden from public view, as all of you can do also, and I hope you do. And this is just objectionable to me because now I'm in somebody's database with goodness knows what control over that or who has access to it. But I'll stand for questions.
Very good. Thank you. Committee, a couple of brief questions. Representative Heiberger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for being here. Now, I'm not trying to be difficult, but in your opening, you said that you probably spoke for the KBI and a number of other agencies. Do you have any authority to speak for any of them?
Oh, that's why I said I'm here with these groups, but I could probably speak to them too, because they are also met with the same request for additional information that's not in the statute.
Do you have any authority to speak for them?
No, I don't.
Okay, thank you. And you mentioned this would allow local government agencies to create new regulations. This language would apply to private property as well, would it not?
Well, I guess I don't understand your question.
Okay. The added language says that no person of authority for the building, and that building isn't necessarily a government building. Is that correct?
Well, this occurs when there are security measures put in place to check everybody who's coming into a facility to attend an event. And that means usually metal detectors, wands, and people checking purses and that type of situation. So if I'm going to Walmart, that's not going to count.
But if there were a private venue where some people were being checked, this would apply, correct?
I can't think of a situation where that would happen. Maybe you can help me.
Well, there are privately owned venues, and most, I suppose, don't check. But I mean, by the wording of the language, my reading of it applies to private property as well as government property. So
well, the section 75-7C22A and then subsection 2 cover wherever I go, I should show my identification. I should be admitted just like an on-duty law enforcement officer. So I can't speculate as to going anywhere else. I'm saying what this statute says.
Okay. Very good. Thank you very much for being here, Daryl. Seeing no opponents, we'll close the hearing on 2406. Committee, before I get killed by Connie, the committee assistant, I would like a motion to approve the minutes of 26/2001 anyway. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to approve the House Fund and State Affairs minutes from January 1st, February 1st, 2nd, 7th, 8th, 9th, and 14th, 2023.
Very good. I have a motion, second by Representative Thomas. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, next we will work HCR 5008. Mike, I remember the revisor this time, so how do you like that? I'm on a roll.
This is a House concurrent resolution calling for a convention of the states for the purpose of proposing amendments to the Constitution to impose limits on the federal government. The limits would include term limits as well as fiscal restraints and so on. There is a balloon amendment. There was a whereas clause that was left out inadvertently, and I'll pass that out.
Very good. Thank you. Committee, we passed this out the last time. Do I have a motion for that amendment? Representative Carpenter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I make a motion that we add this amendment to the resolution.
Do I have a second? Second by Representative Effley. Discussion. Committee, this is just very simply a paragraph that was left out of the first draft that we had of this, and that's all it is. So further discussion. Seeing none, will the maker of the motion move his amendment?
So moved.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign.
No.
Motion carries. Okay, now we're back on the amended bill. Do we need to revise her on that? No, we're good. Okay, thank you. Okay, committee. Representative Epley.
Mr. Chair, I would like to move that we pass out House Concurrent Resolution number 5008 favorably for passage from the committee.
Thank you. And Representative Thomas, seconds. Discussion.
He failed to say as.
Oh, as amended, sorry. Okay, discussion. Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
No.
Motion carries. Division has been called. This is your job to count votes, okay. Everybody in favor, say, raise the right hand. $13. Opposed, same sign. 3, 6. Motion carries 13-10.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like my aye vote recorded.
Who was that? Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Let's go through there. Anybody that wants their aye vote recorded, raise their hand. Representative Moser, Representative Saunders, Representative Carpenter. Oh, Representative Howell, Representative Bueller, Thomas, Epley. All that wants their no vote recorded, raise your hand. Representative Hauser, Representative Jacobs, Representative Clayton, Representative Rees, Representative Hoy, Representative Miller, Representative Hasswood, and Representative Heiberger. Very good. And did I get Representative Hauser? Okay. Anybody else want their votes recorded? Very good, committee. Do I have a bill introduction? Representative Epley, do you have a bill introduction?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate the opportunity. I would like to read in a bill 23 RS 1352. Has to do with, it's an EMS bill for the State Board of EMS to phase out the instructor coordinator license testing that goes on. And that's what it's about. Thank you.
Very good. Committee objections? Seeing none, bill is entered. Further business, committee. Very good. Thank you. Thank you for your patience today, and we're adjourned.